My name is Celia Rowan. I am 25 years old. And on the night my adoptive parents took me to dinner, I knew they were not celebrating my birthday. That was the first clue. They had never celebrated it properly before. Not when I was 7 and watched my cousin Brad get a 3-tier cake while I got one grocery store cupcake. Not when I turned 18 and my mother handed me $20 and said, "You have already cost this family enough." So when Diane and Wesley Rowan reserved a table at Van Ter for my 25th birthday, I did not feel loved. I felt warned. That night, they slid a folder across the white tablecloth. My adoptive father smiled. "Celia, you are old enough to understand where you stand." My adoptive mother added, "We are removing you from the family inheritance." I looked at the folder. I looked at the pen. Then I looked across the room, where my real mother sat with 2 sisters I had only found 6 months earlier. They did not wave. They did not interrupt. They just waited, because they knew what my adoptive parents did not. At midnight, the Ruth Rowan Trust would stop paying them forever, and everything they thought they were taking from me had already become mine. Let me back up. I was adopted at 4, old enough to remember a different voice singing to me, but young enough for adults to call memory imagination. Diane and Wesley called me their miracle child when people were watching. Behind closed doors, I was an expense. A number? Brad was blood. In the Rowan family, blood mattered more than kindness. He got new bikes, camps, and expensive birthdays. I got discount coats and the sentence I hated most: be grateful. I learned early that wanting anything made me expensive, and expensive meant unsafe. So I became useful. I washed dishes before anyone asked. I folded towels. I learned how to look like I belonged there. The only person who ever looked at me like I belonged was Nana Ruth. Ruth Rowan was Wesley's mother, and she did not play polite little games. When I was 8, she watched Diane give Brad a mountain of presents and hand me a sweater 2 sizes too big. Nana Ruth said, "Diane, does God give partial credit for pretending?" The room went silent. Every summer, she taught me that documents had memories, and signatures could outlive people. When I was 16, she said, "If someone loves you, there will be evidence." Nana Ruth died when I was 21. After that, Diane and Wesley changed. Not warmer. Careful. They asked where I worked. They asked if I was still studying trusts and estates. I thought grief had softened them. It had not. They were watching a clock. I became a paralegal specializing in estates because the only language my family respected was paper. 6 months before my 25th birthday, a sealed packet arrived at my office from the bank that administered the Ruth Rowan Trust. Inside was a trust summary, a letter from Nana Ruth, and one sentence that made me sit down. Upon Celia Rowan's 25th birthday, all remaining trust assets shall transfer solely to her. I read it 3 times. Then I read the distribution history. For years, Diane and Wesley had received monthly payments from that trust under care support for me. Housing, education, medical expenses, but I had paid my own rent since 19. I had worked 2 jobs through school. They had kept the money. They had not raised me out of love. They had held me because I produced income. I sat in my office bathroom with the packet on my lap and pressed my fist to my mouth so no one would hear me break. That was the day I stopped wondering why I never felt like a daughter. Nana Ruth's letter was short. "My dearest Celia," it said, "you have survived people who mistook your patience for permission. I could not change the house you grew up in, but I could change what happened after. This trust was never theirs. On your 25th birthday, take your life back. 2 weeks later, I found my birth family. My biological mother's name was Laura Bell. She had been 19 when she lost me, poor, scared, and pressured by people who promised I would have a better life. She had never stopped looking. When we met in a coffee shop, she said, "I kept a chair for you at every birthday." That sentence hurt because it was tender. Laura had 2 daughters, Mira and Jolene, my sisters. They cried when they saw me because I existed. For 6 months, they let me move slowly toward them. Then came my birthday call from Diane. "Dinner at Von Terre," she said. 7 o'clock. Dress properly. We have family matters to discuss. I already knew the trust would transfer at midnight. I knew Diane and Wesley had no legal power over it. But I also knew them. They would try to make me sign something before the clock ran out. So I asked Laura to come to the restaurant. "Sit where I can see you," I said. That night, Van Terre was all gold light and expensive silence. Diane wore cashmere. Aunt Renee joined by speakerphone to witness the correction of a family mistake. When the appetizers arrived, Wesley opened his briefcase and took out the folder. He slid it toward me. "This is not personal," he said. "That is how people begin when they are about to do something cruel." Diane nodded. "You are adopted, Celia. We loved you in the way we were able, but the Rowan assets should remain with Rowan blood." Aunt Renee said, "It is only fair. Brad has children to think about." I opened the folder. A will amendment. A family inheritance waiver. They had marked the signature line with a yellow tab, like I was a child doing homework. I looked up. "Why tonight?" Diane's smile tightened. "Because you are 25. It is time to be realistic." Wesley leaned back. "You have done well enough. We kept you until adulthood. We fulfilled our obligation." Obligation. There it was. The word they had dressed in birthday candles. I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked, "Was I ever your daughter?" Diane sighed. "Do not be dramatic." Wesley said, "You were cared for." Aunt Renee added, "Some children do not even get that." That was when I understood cruelty does not always roar. Sometimes it arrives in cashmere and calls itself reasonable. I closed the folder. Then I looked across the room. Laura was sitting at table 9, tears in her eyes. Mira and Jolene sat beside her, waiting. I turned back to Diane and Wesley. "I found my birth mother 6 months ago." Diane froze. Wesley's smile disappeared. Aunt Renee said, "What did she say?" I said, "She said she kept me a seat." For the first time that evening, nobody spoke. Then Diane recovered. "That is sweet," she said, "but blood family is not legal family." "You are right," I said. "Legal family is paperwork." I opened my handbag and removed my own folder. Not dramatic, just exact. I placed the Ruth Rowan Trust summary on the table. Wesley's face changed before he touched it. Diane whispered, "Where did you get that?" "From the trustee," I said. I pointed to the first paragraph. "Nana Ruth created an irrevocable trust before she died. The assets you think you are protecting are in this trust." Wesley grabbed the paper. I watched him reach the line that mattered. "Upon Celia Rowan's 25th birthday, all remaining trust assets shall transfer solely to her." His hand tightened. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I said, "At midnight, the trust stops paying you. The house stipend ends. The care support ends. The remaining assets transfer to me." Wesley's voice dropped. "Celia, listen to me." I had waited my whole life to hear my name without disappointment attached to it. Now it came wrapped in panic. Diane reached for the waiver. Then sign this before midnight. At least do the decent thing. I looked at her hand on the paper. Then I looked at the woman who made me earn affection by needing less. The decent thing, I said, would have been treating a child like a child, not a revenue stream. Her face went white. Across the room, Laura covered her mouth. Wesley hissed, "Keep your voice down." That made me laugh softly. Because even then, they were more afraid of being heard than being wrong. So I raised my voice. "You kept me because the trust paid you. You cut corners on my clothes, my school, my medical care, my birthdays. You told me to be grateful while Nana Ruth's money passed through your accounts." Diane stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. "You ungrateful little girl." There she was. Not the charity mother. Just the truth with pearls on. I stood too. "I am not your little girl," I said. "You made that clear." Then I took the waiver, tore it down the middle, and placed both halves on the table. Wesley stared at the trust summary like it had betrayed him. But paper does not betray people. It remembers what they hoped would stay hidden. Diane began to cry. Not from grief, from exposure. She said, "After everything we did for you?" I looked at her. "No," I said. "After everything Nana Ruth did despite you." Then I turned away from the table where I had spent 21 years trying to earn a place. Laura stood before I reached her. She waited. I walked the last few steps myself. At table 9, she pulled out the empty chair beside her. "I told you," she whispered. "I never gave it away." That was when I cried. Not at the table that rejected me, at the table that had been waiting. By morning, the trustee confirmed the transfer. Diane and Wesley's monthly payments stopped. Within 3 months, they sold the house on Linden Street because the life they built required money they had never earned. Wesley wrote that I should remember they gave me a home. I did remember. I remembered every cold room inside it. I remembered every birthday compared to Brad's. I remembered learning to be small, quiet, and useful. Then I filed the letter away with the rest of the documents. I used part of Nana Ruth's trust to open a legal aid fund for foster and adopted children treated like paperwork. And Laura became Sunday dinner. Mira became the sister who sent too many voice messages. Jolene became the first person who ever made me a birthday cake from scratch. It was crooked, and it was the most beautiful cake I had ever seen. Sometimes people ask whether I forgave Diane and Wesley. I tell them forgiveness is not a door people get to unlock from the outside. They did not lose me because I became ungrateful. They lost me because I finally understood the difference between being kept and being loved. If someone only holds on to you while you are useful, they are not family. They are an invoice waiting to stop paying. And the day the payment stopped was the day I stopped paying too. With silence, with obedience, with gratitude for crumbs. Nana Ruth was right. Love leaves evidence. So does greed. And on my 25th birthday, I learned how to read both.